Hello and welcome to Just Us 3 episode 12. This week's episode is on growth and we're very delighted to be joined by special guest Harriet Clifford. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm well, thank you.
Oh, good. How are you, Harriet?
Yeah, I'm alright, thanks. Enjoying the nice sun today.
Yeah, it's a lovely day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're going to make the most of it afterwards and go to a beer garden. So make the most of it while we can.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm very jealous about that. I'm kind of self-isolating at the moment, so that's fun.
Oh gosh, that's annoying. Oh, well, at least you can sit in the garden, I imagine, and
exactly, yeah.
enjoy the weather.
Very lucky to have a garden, so it's all right.
Oh, and just to sort of start off, Harriet, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and yeah, just an introduction, really.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. This is my first podcast appearance, so I'm quite nervous, which is funny, seeing as this is about confidence, but I'm really not feeling confident. But yeah, so I'm Harriet, and my full-time job is as an editor of a magazine, and that's only been for the last month or so I'm kind of still settling in. And I kind of also describe myself as a freelance journalist, but to be honest, for the last however many months I haven't done that because it's been really intense at work. But I'm hoping after a big project is over, which is actually finishing on Monday, then hopefully I'm going to get back into doing some freelance stuff as well, because it's really nice to just like supplement it, and I'm really lucky that I don't have to like rely on that for income, and I've got the full-time job, but I also love doing the pitching and the thrill of all that. So yeah, so I kind of describe myself as a journalist, and then the full-time job is the editor as well. So yeah.
Nice.
Oh, brilliant.
We're all students, so it's nice to hear from someone actually in the industry as well.
Well, I'm sure if you're doing, I don't think there's such a thing as a student journalist. If that's what people do, then you're still a journalist. So I don't know if you guys are journalists as well, but
yeah, we're all currently in second year at Sheffield Uni, so just trying to get as much experience as possible, really, while trying to balance the degree.
Yeah, that's so tricky. I didn't do anything other than student journalism, like as in the student newspaper when I was at uni. So I'm very in awe of all these people that I see on Twitter and stuff who are doing so much other like paid freelance work alongside their degree. I don't understand how they do it, to be honest.
I know, I feel the exact same, seeing all these people on Twitter. I don't know what it is at the moment, but everybody seems to be having like so many different opportunities, and it just seems to be flooding in on Twitter over the past couple of days. I don't know what's in the water, but it's all I've seen. It's amazing.
Honestly, same. Yesterday I was like, what has happened? I just opened Twitter and the whole thing was just people announcing jobs, and I was like, I'm very, very happy for you, but this is crazy.
Yeah, especially for them all to come at the same time. It's just so unheard of in the journalism industry.
I know. I mean, it's great. Yeah. It's really great. It's just really funny over the last few days.
Yeah, it feels like there's some sort of secret society that we don't know about.
If anyone's listening and wants to let us in, please let us know.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
I thought it'd be nice to start off by talking about our confidence before we all went into journalism. So how has it differed from where you began to where you are now? And when did you notice a change in this, if we just want to go around?
I can start if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah, great.
I think for me, at the beginning of like doing our journalism degree, I think I lacked a lot of confidence in journalism, especially like, you know, news writing, calling people, like local news stories. I found that quite difficult at first, and you know, putting out a tweet was something that I was like, oh my god, this is getting my anxiety going. But kind of now I find that I'm a lot more confident. I think as you kind of get older as well and you get more used to doing it and speaking to people, interviewing, that you find that you're just a lot better at it. I don't know if you guys found that as you kind of got progressively on with interviewing people, that at first you were like, oh my god, my first interview, and now you're kind of like, hi, yeah, it's nice to meet you. A bit more confident with it.
I felt the same, that although I was quite confident in my abilities to write, to interview someone, I just felt so out of my depth. And when I first started interviewing people at the start of the course, I'd spend the days leading up to it worrying about it, thinking about what I was going to say, and really having to like script things out. And now I feel like I just approach it with an open mind and with confidence, because you just got to fake it until you make it, really. That even if you don't feel comfortable, confident and comfortable, you've just got to act like you are. So yeah, I feel the exact same, Liv, that interviewing really did scare me at the beginning, but slowly my confidence has grown quite a lot in that area, and I'm really glad about it, because obviously it's such an important part of the job. So I'm glad that I've kind of got that under my belt now.
I actually agree a lot with that, Katie. Especially when you sort of said like you've got to act like you know what you're doing, because I think a lot of it does feel like acting. Like, I don't know about you, I'll literally be sat there about to do an interview and I almost like go into this sort of different character, and you have to be very much I don't know, like animated in a way to try and sort of sound professional. But that's just my experience. But yeah, I really struggled at the start with confidence, especially I think we had these workshops in semester 1 of first year, and I remember they were so brutal, but when you look back now you think thank God, because I think that definitely helped a lot. But it was quite hard to sort of accept at the time. But yeah, what about you, Harriet?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything everyone was saying, especially what you just said, Hannah, about the character, going into a different character. I like when I'm sat, especially when it's now on Zoom, before I like click enter the call or whatever, I'm sort of sat at my desk sort of psyching myself up. And if like something stressful has been going on, I'm just like, right, forget that and get into the zone. And then I sort of arrive and I'm like, hello, like nice to meet you. But you just kind of have to, because you're running it, you're like in charge of the interview, and that's really not what I'm comfortable doing. I find the whole thing really stressful, and I still find it really stressful, but definitely at the start it was even worse. And I think over time I've kind of as you all said, like you just grow in confidence with practice. Also what you were saying about, like, obviously you guys are doing journalism degrees, which is really cool, but I didn't do that. So when I started my first job in 2019, I'd never done an interview before. I'd only ever been interviewed for a job, and I'd never just never done it, and no one had ever sort of explained how it worked, so I was just kind of making it up as I went along, and it was very scary. But it was kind of nice when it was in person before, when I first started, they were in person, which in some ways was terrifying, but also it was quite nice because it just felt a bit more natural. Like, I think this Zoom interviewing there's definitely pros and cons, but it's a bit scarier because it's quite like it just sort of sat there. I don't know, it's not like a normal interaction, is it?
I definitely think that when we go back to doing face-to-face interviews, it's going to feel like an absolute breeze, because we've had to deal with Zoom interviews for so long and it's just so different from what we used to. Like, realistically, if you think, we went into lockdown halfway through our first year, we hadn't conducted that many interviews in real life. So all we've really been used to is Zoom interviews for so long now, that I think we're just so raring to get out there and interview people in person now, because you just build up such a better relationship with people when it's in person. And Zoom, there's always like the lag and you're just speaking over people, and it can just be so awkward at times. It's just going to be so much nicer to just get out there and do what we've wanted to do for so long now.
Yeah, definitely. I think you miss people's like mannerisms as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when people are speaking to you, you kind of play off each other, like face to face, I mean. But on Zoom, you're kind of just staring at a screen and you can see yourself. I find looking at myself so distracting. I try not to look. I look at everyone else other than myself, because I just hate seeing it. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but it is very distracting.
You find out so much more about a person when you're with them. And most of the interviews I do for my job are like for features. It's not like a news story that I'm getting a quote for or something. It's a feature, so I've like prepared the questions, and I know I need to get sort of 1,400 words out of it and like really get to know the person and stuff. And it's really hard over Zoom, just like a 30-minute call. Whereas if you meet them, I love bringing in like anecdotes about, oh, we met in this coffee shop, and like it's just all these nice things that you just don't get to have. And like the only things I've been able to do recently is like, oh, and then a cat popped up on the screen or something. Like, there's just nothing nothing fun, like anecdotal about it. And that's like a big part of feature writing, I think, is like bringing in the whole context of it. So it's quite difficult, actually.
When did you all notice a change in your confidence levels? Because we've all said that obviously interviewing, although it's still quite daunting, but we found it a lot easier now. At what point was there a switch for all of us?
I think for me, recently we've been doing news days, and I've been news day editor for both radio and online. And like, obviously you're in a group of, I don't know how many, but it is quite daunting to do that. And like, you're going through and getting everyone's pictures and things. And like you said, Katie, about you've got to kind of fake it till you make it. And I found with that, I was so nervous, but I kind of just got on with it. And I found that my confidence from doing that has got so much better. Like, I can just say to someone, like, where's this story? We need the story now, and not be kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, like kind of be really tentative, because you kind of in the journalism industry, you can't be like that. You've got to be like, where's this story? We need the story now. What's happening? So yeah, that's where I found that my confidence this year is kind of skyrocketed with regards to like journalism and things like that. What about you guys?
I find that the podcast has probably helped the most, in the fact that each week or every other week, we've had to just chat to each other and chat to other people who we've never met before. And it's just become so much more natural. And if you look back on obviously all our podcast recordings, like from the beginning to now, you will see such a difference in all three of us and how far we've come. And I think that's really played a part in, although we've been speaking to each other and we know each other so well, that's helped so much in speaking to complete strangers, because we've built our confidence in that way. I don't know if you two agree with the podcasting side of things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, yeah, I'd say that's definitely one of the main confidence boosts that I've had personally. But one other sort of moment that stands out is I was doing a week of work experience for my local sort of news, not newspaper, but online news website. And it was quite daunting. I think on the first day, the editor said to me, right, can you call up like the clinical commissioning group for the area and like demand to know the vaccine figures and find out if they're lagging or anything like that. And obviously I was like, oh gosh, this is quite scary. But I called up, and even though it wasn't like I didn't get the figures, my mum came in afterwards and said, gosh, that didn't even sound like you. And I thought, ooh, I didn't know if that was a good or a bad thing. But I mean, she said, no, it just sounded like very sort of like confident. But yeah, I don't know. I think I noticed you've sort of said, Harriet, that you used to struggle sort of on the phone, and I think I used to as well. So to hear that was quite nice, really. But yeah, I don't know. What about you?
It's interesting because I think I still don't really describe myself as confident. Like I still think I'm quite a shy person, which people around me find funny because they're like, you don't come across as shy, but in my head I'm freaking out at just like having a conversation. So it's interesting, like the perception that you give off of yourself that's different to what's going on in your head. But I don't really know I can't really pinpoint a time during my sort of career in journalism, but I know definitely that my confidence increased hugely when I just started working. Like after school, when I started working, I initially went to university, and the first time I went to uni, and just was so shy, and really I was quite unwell, so I just ended up dropping out after about 5 weeks. And then after that, like I sort of got a bit better over a period of a year, and then I got my first like job, and it was in a shop, and just that job was so important for me in just like learning how to speak to people and not be terrified, and not just absolutely like, I think I get scared of like freezing and not knowing what to say and just coming across as stupid or weird or whatever, but then I just realized it's okay, like people are just people, they're just there, like you don't have to put on a performance, you're just chatting, and you don't have to say everything perfectly every time, which I think I always, because I'm a bit of quite a lot of a perfectionist, so I kind of feel like every word I say has to be really intelligent or fit into the sentence perfectly or something, but it just doesn't, and people are fine about it, aren't they? If you just sort of mess up a sentence, it's like, that's fine, just start again. Like in job interviews, I've sometimes just been so out of breath because I've been like speaking. I've just had to say, okay, sorry, I just need to breathe. And then I've just had to like stop and breathe and then start again. And they've always been fine with that. Like no one cares. So I think like that getting a job was so important. And then in my journalism career, which actually has been quite short because I started in the company where my magazine is now in September 2019, and then I worked on a different magazine for 6 months, and then the pandemic came, so then I was furloughed for 6 months, and in that time I sort of started doing the freelance stuff, which was great, but it didn't, like, it was really good for my confidence to get published, but it didn't really involve like speaking to people, because quite a lot of the stuff I did was like via email or a few things on Zoom and stuff, but it definitely was a confidence boost for knowing that like I could pitch and get people like to accept my ideas, and like the feedback I got from the writing was really nice. And then my new job, I guess that's only been 7 months now as well, so I've actually only been sort of in the full-time journalist job for a year overall. But I don't know, I think just the confidence that I got from like the promotion recently and stuff, and then I think just really practice, like doing it over and over again, and just knowing that it's like part of my week. And someone was saying, I can't remember who was saying near the beginning, that I used to like think about an interview for like days before and like panic about it and worry so much, but now it's just like, oh, it's just part of my week, and then it just comes along and I do it and I feel much more confident. But I don't know, sorry, it's just rambling now.
No, not at all.
Going back to what you said about working in a shop, I totally agree with that. I worked for 2 years from 16 to 18 in a shop on my local high street, and that worked wonders for me, just speaking to random strangers. And I feel like it set me up really well for a career in journalism, because you just have to make conversation off the bat and just hope for the best. And even if like you have a nice conversation with just one customer one day, like it can really have a positive impact on your confidence, and you just think, oh, like that was really nice, it was such a nice exchange, so why can't I do that with anyone else, like any other random stranger that you come across? I feel like as well, what you said about working in journalism, there's a lot of rejection in this industry, and getting nice comments back from people, and like in your instance, Harriet, getting a promotion, those small wins are so much more than the rejections, because obviously we get so many more rejections than like acceptances, for example, in the world of pitching, and just that one acceptance is enough to like boost our confidence so much more than so many other things. So I think it's just appreciating how far you've come in such a short space of time, and not focusing on like the rejections, for example. You just have to think about where you started and where you are now, and the progress you've made.
Yeah, definitely. The rejections during that time when I was pitching and on furlough was, to start with, it was really hard, and you just want to be like, you just want to give up to start with. You're like, oh, my ideas are rubbish, no one's ever gonna commission me. And I didn't really have any bylines other than like in the magazine I was working for, but they weren't sort of online, so I couldn't like share anything. And I just didn't, I felt like, to be honest, when I first started pitching, I didn't actually realize that you can just pitch. I just assumed that everyone who got pieces published was sort of already had established like relationships with editors. I didn't know you could just cold pitch. I didn't know you could just search for someone's email address and email them. It was like completely alien to me. And then when I was on furlough, I was like, well, I've got all this time, this will be great to like do. And I didn't have a huge financial stress, because I obviously had the furlough money, even though it was a bit reduced, but I was lucky enough to be able to move back home during the pandemic and stuff. So it was quite nice just to have that freedom to be rejected and learn from it, and just learn how to even pitch in the first place, because it was really something very new. But it was just quite nice to sort of realize that it's possible, and you don't have to be really established to get commissions and stuff. But the rejections, I think you do get used to them. But to start with, it's really tough, because you just want to give up, and you just think, oh, well, I thought that was a really good idea, so why on earth has someone said no to it? But
I think a nice point to go from here is if we could go back to our younger selves before we sort of delved into the journalism industry, or in terms of confidence, what would you go back and tell your younger self about, say, the industry or the fact that you should be more confident?
I'm happy to start this if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
'Cause I feel like Olivia may sort of know what I'm going to say here, but I feel like there is one quote that I would love to go and tell myself, and that is what Olivia told me, and it's stay in your own lane. Because honestly, I think we've probably all been there where you just like automatically, without even realizing it, you start comparing yourself to people, especially on Twitter. You know, you see, I mean, as great as it is to see other people's achievements, you do think, gosh, what am I doing something wrong? Like, I don't know, what do I need to be doing to improve? But I think also, yeah, that quote, and I think what you sort of mentioned, Katie, about reminding yourself of what you have achieved in such a short space of time. Yeah, I think I'd say both of those, to be fair.
Yeah, I love that, Han. I think for me, like what I'd say to my younger self is just don't like, if there's something that scares you, go for it. Because often when I was younger, I would be like, oh my God, I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'd get so worried about doing things. And sometimes it just stops me from doing things that I could have done, and kind of not realizing I'm just as able as everyone else to do something. And I think that was a massive realization for me, kind of like, for instance, our magazine Liberty Bell, when I applied for that way back in like my first year of uni, and I was like, oh my God, can I do this? And I was like, just go for it and see what happens. And it's probably been one of the best decisions I made. And yeah, I think it's just a matter of, you know, grabbing an opportunity when it comes and not being scared of it, really.
I feel like I'd tell myself, don't not apply for something or go for something for the fear of rejection or for the fear that I'm not good enough for it, because 9 times out of 10, like, you are good enough for it. And even if you don't get it, for example, there'll be a reason for that, and it's not just the right time or it's not the right role, and that's okay. And I feel like it's really humbling, and you get a lot of rejections in this industry, and that's completely okay, because what's meant for you will find you. And it's just a case of waiting for your moment to shine, and like Hannah said, not worrying about what other people are doing, because obviously everyone's going to be at different stages in their career and journey. So if you were to look at somebody else who was, say, like 25, like we're only 20 and 21, and I just think if you're comparing yourself to someone who's got like 4 or 5 years experience on top of you, that's not going to end well, because obviously they're going to have achieved more because they've had more time to do it in. So I just think, yeah, staying in your own lane, as Hannah and Olivia would say, is the best is the best way to go about things in life, and especially in the journalism industry.
Yeah,
what about you, Harriet? Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely want to tell all those things to myself as well. I think also kind of in the same vein as that, like the time thing, like I'm 25, and I sometimes, because I had a few sort of setbacks, I guess I would call them, in sort of between the age of 18 and between now, that I often do like compare myself to people my age and think, oh my gosh, they're like literally doing this crazy thing. And like, I know I may seem like I'm doing like really well in my career, and I think like I am proud of the stuff that I'm doing. I don't know really what other people would think, but I think I just would tell myself that it doesn't matter if like you never need to feel that you're sort of late, or like you've missed something, or you're not on the right track as you should be or something, because it's just what has happened in your life. And like, yeah, whether it's sort of like mental illness or some sort of other thing that's happened, some like trauma, then it doesn't matter if that means that you've had to take like a year out or something. It won't hold you back, and it doesn't matter what age you are. Like, you can still write at any age, really. It really doesn't matter, does it? And you can still get a new job, and you can still do all this stuff. And I think something else I would also tell myself is not to, like, which is slightly converse to what I've been saying, but not to pin my identity on my career, because I think that's something that I do, and I think a lot of people do that, and it's really good, because like it's partly because we're like passionate about it and we love it, and so obviously it is part of my identity, and I will always it will always be that, but also it kind of, if you pin your identity onto like what you do, then if that thing goes away or gets taken away or you have to stop it for some reason, you kind of like crash and just sort of freak out. And like I think that's what's happened for me a lot when I've like finished university, for example, or finished a specific like project, or school, even when I finished school, and like I suddenly don't have that like crutch of my identity of the thing that I'm doing, and it goes away, then I'm just like, oh my goodness, who am I? And I have this like massive crisis, and then it's like kind of like devolves into an illness. And it's really difficult, because it's like we spend so much time of our lives working and doing this thing, so how are you supposed to not pin your identity onto that? But yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast topic, I think, but that's probably something I would tell myself, just to make sure I'm like confident in myself without the trappings of the career as well, because it's not like the be all and end all, and it's kind of just a thing. At the end of the day, it's just a thing that we do to make money, and obviously it's fulfilling in other ways as well. But I don't know if that made sense to other people.
I think I speak on behalf of the three of us when I say that completely resonates with us, because we're such workaholics and we thrive off of productivity and base our persona off of like how much we've done today, or like we'll only be happy if we've ticked everything off a to-do list. And yeah, that makes us feel great, but like you said, it's only one part of our identity, and we're only doing it to make money. That it shouldn't define us if we're not able to do that as well as we'd hoped one day, for example.
Yeah, definitely. And I also empathise with you, Harriet, about I had a gap year as well, and I dropped out of uni after like 2 weeks. So I was studying English literature, and I get it. You feel like when you're starting uni again, you kind of feel a little bit like, oh my God, I'm behind. I've not done this. Like when I look at other people who are a year younger than me, and I think, oh my God, look how much they've achieved. And it's just like, you can't, like Hannah said, you can't compare yourself to others, because we're all on, we are all on different paths, and it's kind of, yeah, just focusing on yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking at the list. I don't know about you.
Yeah, same. Same. Okay, here's quite an interesting question. So because we were talking a lot about things that scare us, or that we weren't worried about, or that we didn't feel very confident with at the start of when we started out in journalism, what's one thing that you were scared of doing that hasn't actually been as bad as you thought it would be? So yeah, I don't know. I need to have a think about that, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure. I need to have a think.
I think for us, and I think probably Katie will agree, it's doing the podcast. I think at first we were kind of all a bit nervous about doing the podcast, and we were kind of scared about putting it out there and what people would think. But kind of now we're kind of in a flow of it, that we don't really care as much. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, definitely. If you'd have told me, I've said this in many episodes, if you'd have told me a year ago that I would have started a podcast, I would have laughed in your face, because stepping out into like broadcast journalism was something I never thought I'd do, because there's a lot of comfort in just sitting behind a laptop screen and not being exposed in a way like you are when you're in front of a camera or behind a microphone. So yeah, I think the podcast has done absolute wonders for my confidence, and all of our confidence, actually. So yeah, definitely. And then as well, for me, I think reaching out to people hasn't been as bad as what I thought. So like arranging interviews or getting sources for things, you're always so worried about phoning people or emailing. And realistically, like if they say no, it's not the end of the world. And I think rejection is a big thing that I'm like scared about. But if somebody says no, that's fine, just move on and find somebody else. It really isn't that difficult to just like move on from that and accept the no. And I think because obviously we're brought up to believe that rejection is so negative, but actually it's just redirection, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually agree a lot with what you said there, Katie, because I think I remember vividly in first year, I think someone asked a lecturer, like in one of my workshops or something, you know, what do you do if you get people on the other end of the phone who aren't that friendly? Or what do you do if people don't want to be interviewed? And I think they replied and said like 99% of the time it is really nice and they're very friendly. And I think the thing I sort of remember every time, you know, I go to do a phone interview is like, what's the worst that can happen? Like you end the call if it gets bad. But I think, yeah, I was a bit scared of interviews, but I think they were right in saying that most people do actually want to sort of have their voices heard and share their thoughts and opinions. So yeah, I don't think they've actually been as scary as it might seem, really.
Yeah, people are lovely. I'm surprised at how many people speak to you, you know, and you're just like, oh, that was great. So yeah, I get what you mean, Anne.
Especially up north, speaking to northerners is like a whole different breed of people. I mean, in the Midlands, they're nowhere near as nice as this.
I say. We're just a different bunch here.
Yeah, it's refreshing. It really is. Makes my life a whole lot easier, really.
Yeah, especially, I was going to say, especially people in Sheffield, they're just very friendly. But
definitely.
Yeah.
What about you, Harriet?
Yeah, no, I agree definitely about the interviews. I mean, we've kind of talked about it already, but I still kind of get nervous, but I mean, honestly, the things that I'm interviewing people about are, it's just they're like, because I'm not really, unless I'm calling like the Department for Education or something, which I still find terrifying, but then you just talk to the press office, so it's not like they're not actually the people that you want the answers from, so it's kind of okay. But yeah, the people that I interview are just so delighted that I'm wanting to cover them in the magazine, and they just want to tell me everything. And it's really, yeah, like you might have to ask a few difficult questions occasionally, but if they give a sort of vague answer, then you just sort of you just kind of reword it and try again. And like people are very nice. Yeah, exactly. People are just nice and they just want to chat, and it's just another person probably feeling nervous just like I am. And yeah, I think I just really thought it would be terrifying. And I think there's such a big perception, like before you get into the world of journalism, there's such a perception that journalists are these sort of like scary people that just like bombard you with questions, like bang on your door and they're like, tell me everything. And I think before I got into journalism, I was like, oh my goodness, I could never do that career. Like I wanted to go into book publishing because I was like, this is nice and safe and I can just sort of sit and do that. But I just didn't think journalism was a thing that I could possibly do, because I'm not like that, and I would never and obviously that's not what journalists do. Journalists don't harass people, and obviously when you're like in political journalism, or you're on TV interviewing and stuff, you do have to ask really hard questions, but everyone has like journalistic integrity. Like we're not going to attack people, and I think that perception like scared me, and I was like, I can't do that, so I'm just going to ask nice questions. But gradually over time you get the confidence to ask those tricky questions that you know the person might not want to answer, or they might want to they might just avoid it. And obviously it's not nowhere near the extent of like a politician avoiding a question, but even just like getting in one tricky question in an interview, I'm like, yes, I got that question in, and it feels like such an achievement. But that really scared me, and actually it's not as bad as it is just to ask a challenging, it's not even as though it's like an offensive question, it's just a challenging question that you know they may not want to answer, but most of the time they do answer it, and you get a good quote, and it's all actually quite fine.
I feel like there's this perception of journalists that obviously like they're really hard hitting and ask really tough questions, but realistically we're all just making it up as we go along. Like in our degree we are taught obviously how to interview people, and that's great, but we all find ways which work best for us, and we all have different interviewing styles, and there's only so much that someone can tell us, and we then have to just go off of that and do our own thing. So I think just doing things that you feel comfortable doing is enough to then build your confidence, because then it's like every interview you do, you have this kind of like set structure of like, right, this is how I go about it and this is how I feel comfortable doing it. And once you're in the swing of things and doing it many times in a week, it just feels like second nature.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big thing in interviews is it's listening to people as well. I think sometimes it's so easy to like not listen to people, you know, like zone out. We've all been there. But I think if there's any tips that I'd have anyone like doing journalism is make sure you listen to the person, because then you can use what they've said to ask them a question. Obviously, you've got to be very off the mark, but I find that works really well for me, and you can sometimes get really natural answers from people that way. I don't know if you guys have ever found that before.
When I first started interviewing, I very much just followed I'd prepare the questions and I'd just follow them, and someone would say something and I'd be like, yes, that's interesting, and then just ask the next one, which was fine really, because I was just turning it into a feature. It wasn't like that it had to be broadcast anywhere. But you don't, as you say, you don't get the natural answers, and it's not a natural flowing conversation. But that's definitely something that I've gradually learn to do, and just be a bit more responsive and make stuff up and not feel like I have to follow my really rigid structure of questions, which is just not how a conversation goes, and it kind of makes you seem a bit like rigid and not that human. But yeah, definitely listening is such a good piece of advice, I think, because you kind of get really sucked up into your head of like, I need to ask this question, then you actually forget to listen to what they're saying, and you could get a really great like insight into whatever they're talking about if you did just listen.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we also forget as well that they're probably just as nervous as we are, that if they've never been interviewed by someone, they're probably going to be so conscious about what they say and the fact they've never done it before, and we get so caught up in our own worries that we forget about them. So sometimes it can be reassuring just to think, right, they're probably nervous too, so I just need to calm down, make them feel at ease, listen to what they're saying, and just act like it's a normal conversation with a friend.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys have any more like tips for anyone like in the journalism industry who, you know, might lack confidence, or any just tips in general?
I'd say something that I would have probably found useful. I mean, I know the lecturers did tell us this in first year, but I'd say no matter who you talk to, whether you think you'll never need to use them again, or you may need to use them again in the future, but you think, well, I'll deal with that when it comes to it. I'd just say write down or make a note of absolutely everyone you interview, because we've been doing quite a lot of news stories this semester in particular, and I've used, I think, one or two people who I spoke to in first year to see if they sort of knew anything else or knew anyone else. And I think that's just such a good tip. And also, like, with that, I think just try and be really friendly, like, or just be yourself, or just try and make a good impression, I guess, because then if you interview them or talk to them once and it is friendly, and you have a chat about other things, and it seems really natural, the chances are that they'll want to help you out again and help you out in the future. But that's just my experience. I don't know if you guys agree, or if you've got anything else to add.
Yeah, definitely. I found so many more stories because of people I spoke to in my first year of uni. So it's definitely keeping them in contact, having a little contact book. But yeah, just like we've been talking about, just try stay confident, because it is hard in journalism, especially when you're going against, like, if you're not naturally confident, it is hard going against people who are naturally confident. But just try and, as we've been saying, fake it till you make it.
I definitely think you have to back yourself in everything. Even if you're going against somebody who you think is more confident than you, the chances are they're not, and they're just faking it as well. Like, we're all in this same situation. And you can't take anything for face value, because it is just acting in this industry, and that's okay, just as long as you can do it as well. So yeah, just back yourself is what I'd say, on top of what everyone else has said.
Yeah, I think I would say if you haven't done like a degree or any training, then I think that's still okay, and I think it's obviously that's okay. And I think I was going to say it's really great doing the training, because you get to try all the different things. But if you don't do the training, then kind of make yourself do the different things. For example, like, I didn't do a degree in journalism, but I did do, with work, I was offered to do the an NTCJ in magazine journalism, which I've only just finished, and it was actually really useful because we did some broadcast, well, it wasn't really it was broadcast journalism. We had to do a video, and it was something that I would never in a million years want to do, I don't think. But actually doing it, I was like, oh, this is actually not too bad, and it gave me a lot of confidence to think. I think I always thought I would just be in the sort of features writing, with the occasional like news story and stuff. But actually, it's made me really passionate about like news reporting and writing and trying all the different things. And I think sometimes you just think you want to do one thing, and then if you try other stuff, it actually builds your confidence and makes you realize that you're more capable of the other things than you thought, if that makes sense.
I think when you're told to do something or you have no choice but to do it, it's always a good thing. Like when Hannah said earlier, for example, that she was asked to make a phone call on her first day of work experience, you probably wouldn't have done that unless you were told to do it. So just having that push in the right direction can be really beneficial, and like you can realize that you're capable of so much more and you like so many other things just by having that little push in that direction.
Yeah, although having said that, in my, not in a journalism environment, but in my year 11 work experience, I think I mentioned it on the email, I was asked to phone people and I just was like, no. I just said no, and I just sat there and was like, I'm not doing that. So I think you have to get to a certain level where it's not absolutely going to paralyze you, because I just knew I couldn't do that. So it's definitely, getting the push in the right direction is so beneficial, but you kind of have to have had some exposure, otherwise it's kind of could knock you back quite a bit, or you could just be like, no, I'm not doing that, and then that's obviously not great. So it's a tricky balance, because you need to have some level of confidence already. But I mean, that was quite an extreme version. I think most people would probably just pick up the phone, but I just didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I get everyone has boundaries, and it's important that people are able to respect them, and if you really don't feel comfortable and want to say no, then that is absolutely fine.
And I think something to just sort of sum that up quite nicely would be, would you say you're happy with your current confidence levels now? Like, do you feel quite satisfied with them?
Yeah, like I'm more confident. Like I think sometimes I need to be more confident in my work, but that's like a whole different topic, really. But yeah, I'm definitely a bit more confident in myself. So yeah, I just think it's a matter of you've just got to keep pushing yourself and just be easy on yourself when, everyone has a bad day, and that's fine. You can't be perfect all the time. I do tell myself that a lot because, like you were saying, Harry, I'm a perfectionist. So I find it difficult, like everything's got to be great. And it's kind of like, no, you need to step away now and leave it alone. And that's really helped me recently. But yeah, I'm pretty happy. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think obviously like there's always room for improvement, I guess. And I think with what you were saying about sort of pushing yourself more, I think the more you end up in uncomfortable situations, or situations that you don't feel fully relaxed in, I think that ultimately does help. And I think it's just about sort of putting yourself through those situations, really, and then I guess it'll help in the industry, really.
I think, there's definitely the balance between having those boundaries at a certain point. Like obviously in year 11, it's kind of like, this is just work experience. It's not going to do anything. But and then also pushing yourself so that you do them, because you can get, you'll just get stuck, and you won't be able to progress in the way that you want to. And if you really want to do that thing, then sometimes you do have to be a bit uncomfortable, like you were saying. And it's like, it is uncomfortable and not pleasant to start with, but every time you do it, then it will just get better, and eventually you'll be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I was so worried about that before. And so it is a balance. But in terms of my confidence levels now, I think in situations I'm kind of okay with my confidence levels. Like I think when I'm actually doing the thing that I'm maybe wouldn't be confident about, I'm like, okay, I feel okay now, and I feel like I'm coming across. I think I worry about coming across badly, and I think most of the time I do okay. But I think the thing that I want to improve on is the sort of like the thoughts and the feelings I have before the thing, and so that I'm just like panicking about it and like overthinking all the time and feeling really anxious, when actually it's just like a massive overreaction, because I know that the thing that I'm doing is going to be okay. And yeah, I think that's something I would like to improve on, because I just feel so worried beforehand, and it's unnecessary, and it doesn't solve anything, it doesn't help, it just makes me feel stressed. And I feel stressed enough anyway, so I don't really need unnecessary stress as well. And I think a lot of stress is actually unnecessary, but that's another story.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And although I am happy with my confidence levels, I do think that there is still a long way to go. And I just think it's important to visualize your end goal, and to think that in order for me to get there, there are certain things I am going to have to do, and that's okay, and to just take them in my stride rather than unnecessarily stressing about them. So yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Harriet.
No, thanks for having me. It's been really fun. I just enjoyed like chatting. It just feels like a chat, which is nice. I was so scared. I'm just so used to being the interviewer, not being interviewed, and so I was scared. But actually, it was nice.
We always want it to feel like a chat, so it's nice. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I really like when I saw the plan, I was like, oh great, they're going to be like saying stuff as well, because I think it's nice to just everyone to be chatting and just everyone giving their opinions rather than just sort of one person speaking. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for those of you who've got to this point. We appreciate it so much. And thank you again to Harriet for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. And like she said, it's just been like a lovely chat as always. That's been nice. As always, you can find our social media in the podcast description. And if anyone would like to get involved with any episodes, then please get in touch with us on social media or in the email in the podcast description. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a lovely day, all of you, enjoying the sunshine.
See you later, guys.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.